Hey folks, and welcome back to Fireside Farms. I have got a ton of herbs in front of me that we picked. So today we are going to bunch these up and hang them out to dry, and then what I do have dried of calendula we're going to put into a jar. Hush! So what I have here in front of me is already dried calendula. This has been drying over the course of several weeks since the plant has been blooming. As I showed you yesterday, what I do basically is harvest blooms every day and then put them on a grate to dry. And then as they dry, I'll just consolidate them until one day I'm not feeling lazy and I come inside and put them where they're supposed to go. This is all of the yarrow that we harvested. It looks rather sad because it has been cut and sitting for a little while, but we'll just tie it up in knots. It's gonna look sad anyways if I'd hung it or left it in a pile. And this is all the catnip, which we are also going to bundle and hang up. And I went and picked some parsley today because the plant is getting rather big and I want to have fresh dried parsley, which I have never had. I've never grown parsley before. I have the worst time starting it from seed, and I finally just bought some starts. I wait until the flowers are thoroughly dry before putting them in a jar, but even after that, I will open the jar at least once a day for several days and shake the flowers around just to make sure there's no residual moisture caught in the jar. The last thing I want is a spot of mold growing and ruining this entire thing. So for the catnip and the yarrow, I don't do anything special. I'll get a couple pieces, about, I don't know, 4 or 5 chunks. You don't want too much mass that the water inside the leaves has trouble evaporating because they're in the middle of this moisture forest. But you have too little and you're gonna be tying like 100 knots with 100 bunches of catnip everywhere around your house. So just be reasonable about it. Now for twine, to tie it up, what I have is this old jute twine. I've had it for many years. I think I got it at Hobby Lobby originally. I don't think it really matters what you use unless you're trying to stay away from synthetics, in which, yeah, you would want to use either a pure cotton or some sort of jute twine, hemp rope, something like that. But as to whether or not it makes a difference, I don't think it does. I can't imagine why it would, but I'm not sure. But this was super cheap. A roll of the really thin, like bracelet making style jute twine was a couple bucks at Hobby Lobby. Well, or at least it used to be. You don't have to hang them in little bunches like this. It is kind of cute if you place them certain places. I know that I've seen things on Pinterest, wall decorations and such, that are based around hanging herbs. But you can lay them down on a grate or a table, something with circulation on top and preferably on the bottom, especially if you live in a humid environment. But for the amount of herbs that I usually harvest at once to dry, I don't have anything that big to hold all that. Now I could make one really easily. We have spare chicken wire and 2x4s. I could put something together. I just haven't done it yet. But you don't have to do this time-consuming work. You could even pop these in the dehydrator on the lowest setting. Some dehydrators have an herb setting. I don't know if it's 95 degrees. I think it's 95 degrees. If it's different, I'll put it down below. You could also do that if you wanted to dry it more quickly, or if you had obviously very large batches, or you were selling it, etc., etc. I don't mind doing this. I relax best and quiet my mind best when my hands are busy, especially doing, you know, thoughtless work. So I don't really mind sitting here for a little while, hanging herb bundles, and it smells so good. This whole table smells amazing. I should warn you guys, if you're gonna do this method, to tie it extra tight around the stem, because obviously as these dehydrate, they lose water, they lose mass. So these will shrink and then your bunches will just fall to the floor. If you're lucky, they won't shatter into a billion pieces because they haven't dried all the way yet, or you don't have cats that play with catnip when it falls to the floor. Hopefully neither of those two things happen. So the reason I have my bunches in these little U-shaped hangers is because, so I usually hang my herbs here on my bar, just from the wine racks. And I can do that with either a U hanger or just a single string and tie it up there. But when I started hanging catnip up there all the time, the cats can get on top of the bar and they were tearing it down and messing everything up. So I started making these U shapes so I could hang them across the clock here. It's worked out quite well, actually. So we'll just work through one herb at a time here, since the process is essentially the same for both of them. But when I hung up the fresh catnip, I pulled down not old, but the dried catnip from weeks ago probably that I've hung. So I will now store these. They are completely dry. Completely dry, and I will put them in their designated mason jars. When I make teas, these mason jars are what I pull from, usually. Lately, to save myself from having to walk to the long-term storage closet, I just pick up some catnip right here off of the cloth that's hanging. So I should be getting it out of the mason jar that I designated especially for it. I try to get mostly only the leaves. When it's this dry, it's actually pretty easy because the leaves are so crunchy. Like, I'm not trying to crush this into a powder before I need to use it. The more whole you leave this, as in the less leaf area that's exposed to air, the better quality it will be longer. So basically you just want to leave these leaves as whole as possible until the time that you need to use them. All of this stuff I'm not going to save because it is just on a table full of dust and dog hair. All right, catnip is done. Move on to the yarrow. Well guys, that's about it for the herbs right now. I think I left this yarrow hanging a little too long and it's got quite a gracious layer of dust on it, so we're not gonna use that. This is all just leftover herbs that it just didn't look as good off the plant as it did yesterday when I cut it. So all of this is gonna go to compost. I'm gonna throw it in the chicken run. They can eat it if they want it. Otherwise, it'll just be turned into compost. So it doesn't go to waste. And I will put these jars away and then we will get started in the kitchen. All right. We're gonna take care of the peppers first because they look terrible. Ugh. I mean, not terrible, they're just already drying. So I'm pretty convinced some of these I'm going to over dehydrate because, see this is great. This is almost done. But I'm gonna put them in there nonetheless and probably just put these near the front and check on them. So I'm not gonna put the peppers in here whole, but I'm also not gonna cut them up into a million little pieces. I'm just gonna cut the tops off and dehydrate them that way. I'm not sure if I'm gonna use them in, like, rehydrate them for soups or stews. Most likely I'll end up making like a green or red chili powder, but for now I'm gonna leave them as whole as possible. So when you're dehydrating, you do want your pieces to be relatively the same size. I do not have mine the same size. Do not do what I do. But I'm gonna load this dehydrator up now. I don't think it's gonna fill that many trays. Honestly, I think it's only gonna be 2 trays. So what I might do is put all the small ones on one tray and the big ones on the other, and if they dry at different times, I can just pull them out and we're good to go. So it'll work out in the end, I promise. Okay guys, the camera died, but we are back. In the meantime, I washed all of the kale that we'll be using, which is only 4 branches, but they're pretty big, and I think it even might be too much for the 4 tray spaces I have left. But we'll run through how I make kale chips, and then I'll be done for the day because I have to make dinner. I'm never getting out of this kitchen. After washing your kale to remove all the little bugs and critters that have been hiding in there, you want to break it apart into about palm-sized pieces because once they dehydrate, they get pretty small, but I found that the palm size kind of dehydrates down to a Lay's chip size. When you're adding your oils and spices, you can make it just about as unhealthy as you'd like. I use just regular olive oil, and then I base my spices around what I want the flavor to be. I mean, it's really all up to you from here. You can just do salt and pepper, lemon pepper, pizza flavor, dill pickle. It's totally your preference, and that's what makes this so awesome is you get to basically create your own healthy chips. You're gonna put them in the dehydrator for about 7-ish hours at 125 degrees. And then after that, you're all ready to eat. They do need to be stored in the fridge because if you did put oil on them, the oil will go rancid if you leave it exposed to air. So do put them in the fridge if you decide to not eat them right away. Today was a very long day and I did forget to sign out the video, folks, but as usual, thank you all for joining me and I will see you on the next one. Bye.